Hello again. You're watching Today on eNCA, DSTV Channel 43 with me, Dan Moyane. Now, the cash-strapped post office is looking for ways to cut costs. It's considering slashing salaries by reducing the working hours of some staff. The struggling state-owned company says staff-related costs amount to nearly 70% of its expenditure. That's a huge chunk of their budget, of course. Now, let's find out more from the CEO of the post office, Ms. Nomkhita Mona. Ms. Mona, good afternoon. Welcome to Today. Perhaps let's begin here. I mean, how big is the problem, the financial challenges currently you as a post office are facing? How dire is the situation?
The situation is quite dire, and as a result of which is why we are currently looking at different ways in which we could reduce the costs of running the business. But of course, we are also aware that we would need to also make sure that there's new revenue streams coming in. But the situation really is quite dire, and it has been like this for quite a number of years now.
Give us some numbers. I mean, I understand since 2004, the post office hasn't really posted any profit.
Yes, so the last time we posted a profit was in 2004, and since then it really has been a downward spiral coming to the point where we are. But some of the problems that we've had is that we've always had a bloated workforce, a big structure where there was really no work for them. Part of it was because at the time that in the country we were doing away with labor brokers, SAPO then absorbed 8,250 employees who were temporary workers to begin with. So there were no real jobs for those people, but they were then added onto the structure. So no budget, no job for them, but then they were part of the structure. Then later, we had a company called CFG, which is the Courier Freight Group, a division of SAPO. When it fell into financial troubles, SAPO again absorbed another 708 employees, and that just kind of increases the cost of doing the business. But beyond that, I think even before then, there was a huge strike in South Africa that was taken by the post office, and that, in our view, is what actually broke the camel's back, and it has been downward spiraling ever since. But then fast forward to, the digitalization, the post-COVID, economy as well. And then SAPO did not pivot early enough to ensure that we are catching up with the times. And of course, our competitors got into the space and they started eating our lunch. And then COVID came, and it was really the one that put the last nail on that coffin.
Yeah, so just give me some numbers. I'm sorry to go back there because I just want to get a sense of the picture. You've mentioned that you had to take on a number of workers who had been employed via labor brokers, but they were added to your books, although they had no work. And then there was also this additional 700 and odd. So how many workers that you don't need are currently on your books, Ms. Mona?
As of today, the total workforce for SAPO is sitting at 13,613, and we had worked out a strategy a year and a half ago where we were sitting at 15.6, and we had decided that for us to give the business an opportunity to, one, be sustainable or at least just be standing for a while, we would need to take out about 6,000 employees. And as per the strategy then, we were going to take 3,000 in the first year and another 3,000 in the second year. And then we would assess things as we go along.
So where are you at with that process currently as you consider your options?
Well, what we're doing, because of the situation where we are looking at all options, because also we want to exhaust as many other options until you get to the worst kind of option. So we have started a process called the voluntary severance package, where we say to those who say, I'm happy and willing to leave the workforce now, you can then give me a package and I would go. So we started that about a year and a half ago. And well, it actually didn't start a year and a half ago. It had been done even before I joined. And we have intensified last year. So we have taken out a number of people through that process.
How many have you taken out through the voluntary severance process?
Up to now, we took 1,018 in the first phase, and now in December, we took about 385. We are going to take out at the end of this month another 1,000 people. So there is progress in terms of that process. Hence, we are actually sitting now currently at 13,613. We did come from 15,600 in 2021.
Okay, the other options?
Yes, the other options are firstly the VSP. Secondly, we have put to the table in front of the unions a Section 189, meaning according to the LRA, the Labour Relations Act, it is a process of retrenchment. We are not doing that as a first step. We said to them, it may be unavoidable for us if you're looking at the costs of employment for SAPO to go through to that process. But then we said, even before we do that, we understand that this economy is not creating jobs. And how best can we then soften the blow on our employees, but who do need to either leave the employ of SAPO, or we need to reduce costs in other ways. So we have then spoken about reducing working hours to a 3-day work week, meaning that essentially there'll be job sharing. There'll be a rotation of 50% of the staff would work for the first 3 days of the week. The other 50% would come to work on the next 3 to 4 days, because we also open on Saturdays. But what we are also looking at is we do not wish to affect the working hours of SAPO. So SAPO will continue operations in the same way that we had before, but we just will stagger how people are doing this. We felt this is a fair way of doing this. I mean, it's going to be, difficult for people financially, because also we need to remember as a country that in the past 3.5 to 4 years now, SAPO employees, all of them, from the bottom to the top, now no one has received any salary increase, no bonuses, no nothing. So there has always been a sacrifice being given by the SAPO employees, but we have reached a point now where we do have to take these drastic steps.
Is that sacrifice across the board?
Yes, indeed, it is across the board.
So it looks like you're considering some practical ways in terms of handling the pressure you're feeling from the cost of the staff, for the expense that you are faced with, including reducing working hours. Before, I guess, the last resort would be that Section 189 process. The voluntary process is going well. It has taken you as far as it can, with some 2,400 workers now out of the system, and you are sitting at 13,613. So what would push you to go towards the scenario that you're trying to avoid, knowing what we know about this country, the economy, the lack of jobs? What is it that would push you there?
Well, we believe that the decision has already been made for us by the numbers that we see in our bank accounts. So that's the first thing that needs to be spoken about.
So are those numbers positive? I mean, when you say you've seen the numbers in the bank account, it means things are improving or still going down?
No, the numbers are not improving. Because remember, for numbers to improve, we need new business, we need new areas of business. But what I also omitted to add on part of our initiatives that we are doing is that we've also approached the Productivity SA together with the UIF, the CCMA, and the Department of Labour, where we are looking at various ways and means as to how it is that we can help each other. But secondly, which is more important actually, is that we are looking at alternatives that how do people from SAPO, how can they close that gap of 40% by also turning around and servicing some of our business. For instance, we have a business that we need courier services, and if people do have cars and they come onto the owner driver model that we are finalizing at this point, then we can give those people, guarantee the work to the SAPO, either employee or ex-employee. Also, there are other ways and means that we are saying internally we do have services that people can still do to try and claw back onto the loss of income. So we are really doing as much as we can, but the allegiance that we have is really to the company. It is important for us that the company does survive, so that in the future this country can have a functional SA Post Office.
Will it survive?
We think it could. The challenge that we have now is that we have a financial cash flow problem, but we do not have a problem of future opportunities for this company. That's what excites us, and that's what keeps us going, because we can see the future, that it is actually quite bright. But our current reality is that we owe every man and his dog some money, and we need to ensure that we get the support we require to get to a point where, one, we can liquidate some of these debts. Some of our creditors have given us more than enough, grace in terms of saying, well, SAPO, you need to start paying up now. But secondly, and most importantly, the strategy that we put together, called the strategy, the Post Office of Tomorrow, is extremely, extremely exciting. And that strategy needs to be funded. If we can get funding for the strategy, we may in the near future never ever ask government for handouts anyway. But it's important now where we are, so that we can get out of this big hole that we are in, that we get a hand up from government. But secondly, government does need to support us, because we do services on behalf of government. There is a process called the Universal Service Obligation. We have an obligation to ensure that all South Africans throughout the country, rural, urban, etc., they have access to postal services, and that is a government mandate. Government does need to continue funding that part. But on the business side, we are very excited at the prospects of this SA Post Office, and it would be sad to watch it die, because we know that someone would make good out of it, because there's great opportunities for the business.
Yeah, in terms of that Post Office of Tomorrow strategy, what would be the ideal workforce number that you will be working towards, and what kind of new revenue opportunities have you identified?
Yes, so at the time we did the strategy, we were looking at 9,600 people that would be looking into it. And we, of course, believe that they could also grow based on the revenue opportunities. So in terms of businesses that we've identified, firstly, the logistics sector. This is where we are, and we have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be just refreshed and put right into the system. So logistics is going to be a big one for us. We are pushing it very hard. And secondly, the e-commerce space is a very big space, and the SA Post Office can be a hub for the Sub-Sahara Africa, and the rest of Africa. Already, we are a hub for the Sub-Sahara. So, goods come through us, are taken by the SA Post Office, and we distribute them into the countries, into Africa. So, for us, the opportunities are endless, and we have the reach that we have. We have access to many other places that other companies in the space would really just hope for. And we believe that those would be the things that we would need to push going forward. So we're very excited with the prospects of the SA Post Office. But also we believe that we can be a service center for government services. For instance, if there's no Home Affairs in your rural village, or there is no Home Affairs in your area, we are going to be co-locating with the Home Affairs people. We already are doing business with the Department of Transport via RTMC and RTIA in terms of the motor vehicle licensing. And we are looking at other departments where we can do the same and ensure that the SAPO of tomorrow succeeds, because actually, quite frankly, it can.
Yeah, I mean, I renew my car's disc. I renew it at a post office, at my local post office. So if you can get more government services on stream, who knows what will happen. But the digital space, the e-commerce space, I guess that's the future. Thank you very much for your time, Ms. Nomkhita Mona, the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Post Office. They are trying to target a workforce of around 9,600, reducing it currently from the 13,613. But it's a process, and they're thinking of so many ways to make sure that the people who might be affected are not worse off. We'll find out how that's going to happen in the future. It's tough times indeed for the post office.